Hello and welcome to the Performance Physique podcast. My name is Arj and I am your head coach. This podcast is all about helping you with your running, your nutrition and your training. We take the jargon out of sports science to help you realise your goals faster than ever before. Let's get started.
One of my favourite parts has to be this.
So I thought, you know what, this is actually a really interesting topic because...
You know what, I think she's amazing. She really
One story that really caught my attention this week.
My story relates to a particular TV.
It's going to take away a lot of jobs.
Week in Review.
Oh yes, it's time for Week in Review. So this is where I get two Londoners in the studio. We discuss their top stories, what matters to them, and we hopefully right the world for all of the wrongs, and we say goodbye to those. But great to have them both back in the studio this afternoon. Joining me, I have founder of Performance Physique, Arj Thiruchelvam, and also brand and culture expert, broadcaster Nick Eade. Great to have you both here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Now, I said this to you off air and you both burst out laughing, but I kind of feel like it's one of those where you're really going to frown or you're going to laugh because my gosh, it's the 30th of January. This month has really gone on, hasn't it?
It's still going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still going.
But it's like 5 weeks in this month.
It's a long old time, isn't it?
Have you felt, Nick, that it's dragged?
It's dragged so much.
God.
And the thing is, first of all, people are trying to have a new resolution.
Yeah.
And, this is a long month to start running like I've done.
Yeah.
It's a long month to also have, you've spent all your money at Christmas.
Yeah.
People have got their tax returns.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
But no, literally, this is like the world's worst month. And you feel that Christmas Day should really be tomorrow.
Exactly.
Because then there'll be something to get excited about. Because there's really nothing to get excited. Maybe Valentine's Day is the next thing that we can think about, but
Sure.
really this is too long.
It is gone on for too long. And then also, if you add into the mix, because you make a very valid point, Nick, that this is the month everyone's thinking new me, new year, new beginnings, which means Veganuary, or you're not drinking alcohol, or you're trying to be health fitness crazy. So I think it's the perfect time to ask you, Arj, as somebody who it does so much with the world of performance, with training athletes on a regular basis. For anyone who's, fallen off the wagon or maybe just hasn't even got onto the wagon, and I'm talking about just fitness, staying healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about losing weight, but staying healthy. What do you want to say to somebody on the 30th of January, day before the last day of the month, finally?
I'll let you into a little secret here.
Go on.
As when we run Performance Physique, for many, many years, we deliberately do anything in January for new members or anything at all.
Really?
We used to push everything into February because January is full of very short promises, isn't it?
Yeah.
February was for those who, I don't want to be part of the hubbub. I actually want to do my work quietly.
Right.
And then make big amounts of noise when I come out and surprise you with my new performance, my new personal best, my new
Love
goal
that.
or whatever.
And it's a short month as well, which is kind of good too. So there we go.
Lovely segue.
Win-win. But so that's a really nice way to look in and to head towards February here, is what you're saying is, no, begin from February.
Yeah,
Get
totally.
rid of the pressures of January and focus on February being the month that you tackle, there's little things that you want to do in your health.
It really is that, because how many people are doing something in January? Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And suddenly your mission, which it might be to walk, 1 mile.
Right.
And someone's telling you about how they're running 50 miles per week. That suddenly it belittles you and you feel really upset.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, there's no point in me doing this.
Yeah.
So instead, people have kind of stopped talking about it in the last week or two of January.
Yeah.
People have started slipping, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, I think it's the third week is most people's New Year's resolutions have gone. Whereas in February, we push on and we're saying, no one's talking about it.
No one's talking about it. So this is really, really good news. So, I've spoken to you both individually about this. Last year, I took on what is, I would say, the biggest challenge of my life. I finally learned how to swim, and it was with children in need. A lot of our listeners tuned in, followed my journey, warts and all. That's the best way to describe it. And I continued swimming after, and then obviously Christmas hit. And I'm going to be very honest with you both now. I still haven't had the chance to go swimming, and I've been feeling really guilty because I actually really enjoy it. And when you wanted to do something your whole life, Nick, and you can finally do it, and you're like, right, well, I should be doing it then. But I haven't. But now I feel really good, Arj, because you said it's okay. You can start from February.
Yeah, you shouldn't feel guilty.
Really?
There should never be a sense of guilt. Guilt isn't very productive at all.
No.
Yeah, it's true.
9 times out of 10, it's not effective, and therefore you need to look at what the positives are. You've created this opportunity, and this opportunity in January.
Yeah.
Yes, swimming's had to go to the side a little bit.
Yeah.
But in February, I'm going to do this with my swimming. Time has eased
Got
up a
you.
little bit.
Love
Yeah.
that. I
What's
think
your thoughts, Nick?
Well, I think it's really important. I mean, I'm doing the marathon, and
Yes, I know, yes.
I've never really run before. So, like
Okay.
you,
Yeah.
it's kind of pretty new.
Huge.
I'm hating every single minute of it, but I'm doing
But
it.
that's okay to say.
It's
I'm
okay,
so
yeah,
glad you're
I
saying
do.
that.
I mean, I'm not a natural runner.
Yeah.
Only thing I may do is run for a bus sometimes, but apart from that, or the tube. But no, seriously, but I'm learning, and I actually haven't pressurized myself so much, and I've stopped looking at social media because
Okay.
it can really engulf you, and you look at all these
Totally.
people with 6-packs immediately after they've had 2 weeks off at Christmas time. You're like, how have they still got that?
Yeah.
Or you look at people who are training for the marathon, and you're like, actually, that's not my pace, whatever.
Yeah.
So I've even said, somebody today said to me, so what's your time? And I'm like, I don't care what my time
good.
is. It's just the achievement of being there, doing it, and raising money for charity.
Yeah,
Love
that's huge, actually. I want to follow the journey. You're going to keep coming back and telling me how it goes.
I will tell you how it goes.
Because I love you for saying you're hating it.
Hate it.
Because I absolutely hated it, and I used to talk about it on air. I hated the training. I used to moan every single time I'd get in that pool, and even when I completed the challenge, I was still moaning. But then after about a week later, I was like, wow, okay, I've done this. It sunk in, and I was really emotional. And I will say now to you that I'm proud of myself.
Yes.
At the time, everything was just the worst thing in the world. But it's nice to hear from real people, Nick, that you feel that way.
My gosh, of course I do. And I also people are sort of saying to me, oh, Nick, why do you listen to a podcast while you're doing that? Make you feel better?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't make my limbs feel any better listening to a podcast.
Performance
you
insight
say?
for you.
Oh, come on, let's go.
Here
Come
we
on.
go.
Come on.
Performance insight. You
Yeah.
hate it because it means so much to you.
Okay.
Yes.
You value something. So yeah, it's incredibly painful because it's incredibly rewarding. You get endorphins because your body's in a position which sees a challenge or to be honest, the pain, and therefore you're getting the reward. But we hate doing things very often, not every time, sometimes it's just rubbish, but very often because actually this is so valuable to us and therefore we want to deliver.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of thinking of it. This is why you are a trained coach and professional. This is why you work with all the athletes that you do, clearly.
That's why I'm not.
And this is why Nick, you and I are not. We're sat on the sidelines. That's why you and I usually rock up to London Marathon and we wave on the sidelines, But there is something in, so I think this is a great positive for us to take away this afternoon. For everyone who's been finding January's dragging on, it really has.
Yeah.
But come the 1st of February, which of course is in 2 days, that's where you can use that as your reset to get going. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to think about things. Stay with me, guys. Going to continue having a chat with my guests. By the way, if you're training for the London Marathon, how's that going for you? It's a good time to start, isn't it?
So I thought, you know what, this is actually a really interesting topic because
I think she's amazing.
One story that really caught my attention this week.
My story relates to a particular TV
It's going to take away a lot of jobs.
Week in review.
Oh, we've been having such a fantastic chat today. This is basically a segment of the show where we look back at the week that was. I always am joined in the studio with 2 guests, 2 Londons, discussing their stories of the week. Joining me now is founder of Performance Physique, Arj Thiruchelvam, and also brand and culture expert and broadcaster Nick Eade. So thanks for staying, guys. Nick, I really was taken by this story. The Smiley Charity Film Awards. Tell us more.
Yes, so these are film awards which are actually going to be having a big award ceremony in March at Indigo at the O2. Lisa Snowden's hosting it.
Nice.
And they were announced that basically various different charities from up and down the country who make these wonderful films can decide to basically submit those films, and they're going to be nominated to potentially win an award. So the nominations are open now, so anybody can go online, it's free, and you can watch these amazing films and then decide whether you think they should be.
So I can
you
go
can do
myself?
that. You should go on to Smiley.
Love that.
charityfilmawards.com and have a look at them. And there's around about 500 entries already. And what's so interesting is you've got the massive ones that you may have seen. There's the Tom Daly one, which was a don't swim and drive. No, don't drink and dive.
Yeah.
But there's really small ones. There's one from a Hedgehog Foundation, really just telling you how to basically improve your garden environment so that you can encourage hedgehogs to actually live there. And these people, some of them they spend millions, some of them they spend hundreds.
Yeah.
And it's great to give them this opportunity to show off what amazing things they are. And I think, charity films do have an impact, don't they?
They do. You're absolutely right. I mean, sometimes you'll let's say if you're watching a film and you'll see like a short charity advert, something will stay with you. But imagine that on the capacity as a film. In it's told in such a narrative with characters. You're absolutely right. It does have a lasting legacy. And I was just dropped the team an email. I would love to get them on the show, the Smiley Charity Film Awards. And people can go to smileycharityfilmawards.com, can't they, for more details. So it's happening in March, but the nice area around this, as you say, anyone can apply.
Yeah.
So you could be a really small local community charity doing, amazing work in your neighbourhood, in your part of London, and you can send it across as well.
Exactly.
I absolutely love that. Right, let's go to the next story then, shall we? Yesterday I was talking a lot about the Gen Zers, Arj, and you want to put them back on the agenda. Go ahead.
Yes. I know they're, us maybe slightly older and Gen Z will feel negatively towards them for some unknown reason. We always see these negative connotations. However, some amazing data came out this week and over the last couple of weeks as well about how Gen Z are bringing a revival of running. Now, we look at running back in the 70s, was it yogging, Silent J and all that kind of stuff. No one did it for fun.
Yeah.
Excuse the film pun there. But now we are seeing not just a revival in running, but a 50% uptake in New York City marathon uptake from just that population, Gen Z. And we're seeing across the board 39% increase in running uptake over the last 5 years. This is like huge numbers changing.
Why?
Well, that's a great point. For Gen Z, it's believed that they are lonely and struggling with the economy. Okay. So being in your 20s, everything's effectively digital. Many of them have only ever worked from home, never gone into an office, etc.
Okay.
Studied through COVID, therefore on their own. Not necessarily brought up without a mobile phone and understanding how to form relationships and conversations, and therefore have found themselves being quite lonely. And what's on the rise? The free running club. These aren't necessarily coach clubs or anything, but just communities where people can come together and
go
meet
for a
one
run.
another. Exactly.
That's all right.
And at the same time, we always make the statement that running is cheap. Nick, you're running a marathon. You know how expensive all the clothes are and the trainers and stuff. But realistically, you can do it on quite a tight budget. And we're witnessing this now with the Generation Z population who are really pushing running. And just on the weekend, it was the National Running Show. And I was there because I was nominated for Coach of the Year. But
Congratulations. Huge congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you. But with that, they recorded their largest ever attendance as well. 30,000 people descended on the weekend to attend a series of speaking slots and witness different feats of running, basically.
Okay.
Massive push on running, and it's only getting larger, potentially because of events like High Rocks. You may have heard of.
Yeah,
I have. For anyone who hasn't, what is that though? Because that's becoming more and more popular, isn't it?
High Rocks is like a school fitness challenge, and I'm sure the people who developed the brand absolutely detest the fact that I've associated it with that. But it's about several different, very basic, straightforward events like pulling a sledge and having to throw a medicine ball, but interspersed with 8 kilometers of running, and it's quite high intensity running. Because it's quite low skilled, it means it's accessible to loads of people. It's not necessarily just yourself against everyone, but you can go in partners, you can go in age groups. So it starts to make it a little bit more inclusive.
Okay.
And because people have gotten into this, they've realised the most important area to then develop is running. And therefore,
that's why we've seen such a resurgence. I mean, only today, earlier on, I was talking about how Gen Z are bringing back and the sales and surgence of vinyl records. Yeah. So
and cassettes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that shows, Nick, that I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I decided to wear like really cool, what I thought were cool jeans, like flares, from the bottom. And my mother-in-law turned, she goes, Shay, I used to wear those. Those are bell bottoms. I was like, okay. And she's like, literally, she looked at me and she said, yeah, everything comes around.
Yeah.
Everything comes back around. And I was so taken by that because my mother-in-law, who I call mum, she's 70 now. And you think, gosh, yeah, you're right. Back in her day when she was in her 20s, all of that fashion, all of that style, it's crept back.
Yeah.
For those of us who were born in the 80s, we're seeing a lot of that resurgence around. If you listen to music style, whether it's Taylor Swift or Dua Lipa or even The Weeknd, tapping into that 80s genre music.
Yep.
Now we're hearing that Gen Z is bringing back our lifestyles, basically.
Completely. It's crazy, isn't it? I think definitely with music, I think with fashion trends, we see this complete resurgence of things that we, the slogan T is back again.
Yes.
Like that was something that we've, always comes back. But, just quickly about the running, which I think is really interesting because, living in Shoreditch, especially during the pandemic, it was, Victoria Park was a massive hub where you saw people running and obviously communicating. But I think that running also for that generation too is great for their mental health.
Okay.
But also the other thing too is a lot of them have stopped, we've talked about this before, are not drinking so much.
Okay.
So it means they have a clear head and they want to actually spend some time doing something else. And they're finding actually running is a really great way of doing that. And it keeps them fit, they feel healthy. It's actually very fashionable as well.
Okay.
It's very on trend. And if you walk around Victoria Park, you see probably the sexiest supermodels running around.
That.
I mean, I'm just breathless.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I'm still doing it.
It's still part of the running club.
Exactly.
So well done, you. Maybe there is something in the fact that we could take a leaf out of Gen Z's book, but it's nice to see that they're taking a leaf out of ours as well, actually, which I'm quite impressed with. Let's move to the next story then, shall we? This one was a personal one. This is about a book called An Inherited Mind by the ABC reporter James Longman. Tell me about this then.
Well, it's really interesting because I think people they talk about things you inherit genetically, and that might be whether the way you look, it could be that you might have, say, like heart disease or a stroke, etc., that go in your family. But actually, do we ever think about mental health? Do we actually think about the mind? Do we think about depression? Do we think about schizophrenia and whether those are passed on? And I find it really fascinating. My father was a geneticist and I'm adopted. So my father literally looked at us, me and my brother, who's adopted from another family, as a little bit of a kind of experiment in the fact of sort of nature over nurture and how we were. And I've very recently discovered my actual birth family. So I've met my birth mother and I've got a brother and sister. This has literally happened in the last year.
That's
and
beautiful.
So it's beautiful, but I found out that there was a lot of sort of things that were passed down in that family that I have no relationship with. But now when I hear them telling me a little bit about that, and these are things to do with mental health, etc., I suddenly go, actually, maybe you can inherit this from a blood relative. And I think what James has done, he's opened up this brilliant conversation. It means that people feel more free to talk about it. It creates debate. And I think it's so important because we know we all suffer from mental health issues, no matter who we are.
Sure.
And sometimes we have high days and low days. And sometimes you're thinking, why do I feel this way? When actually everything's fantastic around me, but what is it? Right. And this could be it, that is actually something that's inherited.
It's quite, I was telling you off air because I remember being 10 years old and my brother-in-law, who is also a geneticist, kind of sat my brother and I down. He felt very passionately that we should be aware, that we should know that in my father's side of the family that we have clinical depression. And I didn't necessarily know what it meant, but I remember when I got into my teens, I kind of tapped into that and spoke to him more to get an understanding of why he wanted us to know. But it was, if you are, especially when you're in a dark place, if you're going through something, if you have an understanding that a family member may have gone through this or may have some concept or understanding, it allows you to get the right support.
Exactly.
It's the worst feeling when you feel completely alone, isn't it? And it's not in any way, shape or form to say that anything that you're going through with your mental health is only going to be through your bloodline, but there could well be something there.
There could be something there, and you can maybe potentially ask somebody in the family. And again, it opens it up because, we know generationally, the older generation don't want to talk about their feelings.
Sure.
We're much more predisposed to be doing so, and we do it more. But I think this is so important to open up this conversation and to also ask for help as well. I think, again, we're very stiff upper lip, especially coming from the UK. We don't ask for help. And if you're in America, you'll be getting help from day one. But, I think it's really important. This book, I think, is very significant. And also, it's got humour in it as well. You know, it's not too worthy. I think people now need to read books which entertain them and educate them at the same time, rather than throw something down their throats and make them feel a little bit shy.
What's that known as? Infotainment, I think. But I see it is, isn't it? What's your perspective on this then, Arj?
Well, I think this is fascinating, and from a perspective of ethnic minorities, we're not great at discussing things. You know, I come from a mixed background, and my mum was all about having discussion, and my father, you know, he won't be listening, I'm sure, because he knows I'm on, so he'll have turned it down at that moment. But he would be of the kind of mentality that you've just mentioned. We'll be fine. Yeah. We don't need to talk about that now.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that there's perhaps another route for the discussion to happen, whether that is with agencies like the Samaritans or whether it is in a book, understanding that there is an opportunity to discuss.
It's quite something that, and I think you're right, it opens up a whole different dialogue when you realise that perhaps a family member, a parent, a sibling, a grandparent could have gone through this as well. If you tune into Radio London, you're affected by any of the topics we're talking about, you can also go to our website, bbc.co.uk/actionline for support. I'm going to continue having a chat with my guests straight after this.
So I thought, you know what, this is actually a really interesting topic because...
I think she's amazing.
One story that really caught my attention this week.
My story relates to a particular TV
It's going to take away a lot of jobs.
Week in Review.
Week in Review, it's the final part for this hour. It's always a busy one and I do enjoy it. It goes by too quickly. Joined in the studio, the founder of Performance Physique, Arj Thiruchelvam. You can get more details on performance_physique, and also brand and culture expert Nick Eade on Nick Eade on social media. We were talking about the power of social media. Let's put this onto the agenda properly, shall we? The story you wanted to discuss around Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. Just give us a context for anyone who isn't aware.
Well, this is a big... there's a film called It Ends With Us, which was directed by Justin Baldoni, starring Blake Lively. And just before Christmas, Blake Lively basically got the... New York Times to do a piece about Justin and allegedly talking about sexual harassment and saying that it was a terrible experience on the film. We knew that during the junket that they were never seen together. So there was kind of like little sounds about that. People on social media were talking about it. But what's happened now is people have become internet sleuths. You know, we did have Wagatha Christie. This is like blowing it up in a massive way because these, you know, Blake Lively, you know, she's Taylor Swift's best friend. Her husband's super famous. Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
You know, these are the power couple in the US and in Hollywood. And this was her comeback. So it was really important for her. And the film made a lot of money.
It was hugely successful.
Very, very successful. So why would we want to tarnish it? But it's really tarnished now because of this court case that's going to be coming up. And Justin Baldoni has used social media with his lawyers to basically put everything out there before Blake can get to it. So this is so interesting. He's even going to allegedly release a website which will have every single text message that they had, all the WhatsApp, he's even released footage from the takes from some of the scenes that she has allegedly said there was some issues there. So this is becoming so crazy because the general public are using social media to sleuth themselves. And I'm like, is this a good thing to do? Yes, we all get to see everything, but should things be behind closed doors? And also the court of public opinion have so many opinions that it could cloud everyone's judgments.
Also reminds me, you talked about Wagatha Christie, but the Johnny Depp case.
Yes.
Exactly what came to mind.
Did that come to your mind as well? What was his ex-wife? I can't remember her name now. Amber Heard, that's it, thank you. The Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, because that kind of took everybody by storm. And then, of course, there was the Netflix documentary, which unpacked everything that was said, along with all the social media posts. What's your perspective on this? It's a whirlwind.
It really is. This might take you by surprise, but I have actually been following this very closely.
I love you. Oh my God, we're great friends now, running partners, and we can talk about Justin Baldoni
at the same time.
Exactly.
And I've got to admit, I don't know anything about either party.
Okay.
And every couple of days, every few days, a new bit of information came out from one side, and I was like, oh, well, it's clearly Blake's side which are telling the truth.
Okay.
And it would be, well, Justin, that sounds like very convincing evidence. And it is swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
And coming into this room, into the studio, I have an opinion of, well, I think Justin's probably on the bad side, and then you've just revealed the latest bit of information. Why is he going to share all this information if he's guilty? And I think you're right. We've said this, very, very, very quite a long time ago when court TV first started coming around, how much the jury and how much us as the public can sway a court case, and how juries are removed for having read a newspaper. Now they are getting live stream of basically everything happening.
And I mean, if you think about it, just now in the last 24 hours, the latest in what has been quite a plethora of documentaries and films on O.J. Simpson, it's out. American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson. It's currently out on Netflix. The current documentary, just focusing on all that happened during the court dramas during the murder case with O.J. Simpson. So we've been engulfed, haven't we, with celebrity life, but when things go wrong for decades.
Well, we love it. This kind of thing is so important. But one of the issues here as well is cancel culture. Because, that's why, people look at these courtroom shows and Wagatha Christie and they get so invested with them, and then suddenly you see them being made into a musical. But also, you look at Gwyneth Paltrow and her skiing accident.
Yes.
And that whole court case, we're obsessed with it. But we can use public opinion to cancel people when they shouldn't be cancelled. And that's why I think there needs to be a bit of protection, because we don't know all of the story until right at the end, and it feels sometimes a bit hard to actually formulate an opinion. Like you say, I sway left and right on this thing, but I do think Ryan Reynolds potentially could be part of this whole thing in a massive way.
It's going to be an interesting one, because in the world of the box office, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, they did very well, exceedingly well last year.
But Shay, who's going to play Blake Lively in the film version?
Yeah, no, there is that. It's an interesting one of how it's all unfolded. Then you talk about them being a big Hollywood couple, but it's all speculation. But your perspective is more around social media and how people, all of us, even we're here in the UK, we get sucked into what's happening in the world of celebrity. Let's move to the next story, which is a technology one, an important one that's affecting us all. China's DeepSeek AI has it's completely shaked the industry, but also, as the BBC reports, has dented America's swagger. What's this about them?
So the DeepSeek AI project is effectively the Chinese version of ChatGPT. ChatGPT is incredibly expensive to operate, both in energy but also financially. And DeepSeek AI appears to be, if not equal, better than ChatGPT at a margin, an absolute tiny slither of the cost, as they claim. We don't exactly know how much it costs to run, but in the millions, as opposed to the hundreds and hundreds of millions it costs ChatGPT to run. What this did was it destroyed the US tech stock market, took hundreds and hundreds off the stock market, and actually, quite confusingly, because they're using chips which both companies utilize. They're the same, except that because of the sanctions in place, China don't have access to the latest NVIDIA, being the brand chip.
Okay.
So everyone's saying, how have they managed to do this? How is this working? And in a new development, just recently, just in the last couple of days, a study's been published demonstrating that AI has now officially crossed the ethical red line, because it's managed to replicate itself 9 out of 10 times without the support of a human to do so.
That's the big concern that people, I mean, straight away you say that and I think Terminator. I mean, head just goes to Terminator. That's all that's coming into my mind. And what is it, Skynet? There you go. I mean, sometimes I just feel like Hollywood films have predicted a future we do not want, but it's quite scary.
It really
Should
is.
we be scared?
I'm scared.
Really?
Whether we should be or not. Personally, I feel it's really unsettling seeing so many quick developments. And I speak to a lot of my athletes as well. Okay. And a lot of them are student athletes, and they're studying. I say, well, do you ever use AI? And they're like, oh, yeah. Every single piece of work, I talk to ChatGPT or I speak to the Google version.
So where is the learning within that?
Exactly.
That's the thing. What's your perspective?
Well, I completely agree. I think the learning thing is the most interesting thing for me, because I think people now use ChatGPT for everything that they do. And
almost like an assistant.
Yes, an assistant. So even when you do PR pitches for brands, you'll say, yes, I've used ChatGPT because I want to sort of second get greatest proposal out, or a good press release, or an invitation, or I want a list. I want to know how to do a speech properly and have it written for me. And it just feels like it's taking away, well, it is, it's taking away humanity, it's taking away personality. But what's more scary about it is it also can adopt personality and replicate your personality, and that to me is the most scary part of all of it.
We've opened the Pandora's box, haven't we? And I wonder if it's the whole conversation around regulation or what we do as communities, as civilization, to manage it. That's the thing, because you can't fear something that's already there. It's about trying to understand how it can maybe better your life, or ensuring that it doesn't impact your life. It's a whole conversation as well, of course, around the jobs that we have and where that will be in the next decade, if not 5 years. And we leave it on quite the thought-provoking conversation. It's been such a pleasure having you both here, Arj and Nick. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like more details, go to performance_physique on social media, and Nick Eid as well. Thanks again, guys. Thank you. Absolutely enjoyed that chat.
Thank you very much for listening to the Performance Physique podcast. Don't forget, you can find us on Instagram. It's at performance_physique. You can find us on Facebook, Performance Physique, or if you just head to performancephysique.co.uk, and we'll do our very best to help you. It will mean the world to me, though, if you can share this podcast with one friend this week. Right, for now, take care.